call the street committee meeting to order here August 27th, 2018. We'll start with the pledge. Alan, you want to lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, would you roll, please?
Walther.
Here.
Carter. Here. Hayes. Here.
All righty. Well, we have a pretty big agenda here, and I know Mel needs to 5:45.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. I've got a soccer game to get to. It's an hour and a half away. So.
And some of these may be fairly.
Well, what I want to do.
Some may be, some may not.
If I keep leaving my kid at cross country practice, they're going to call child services. So.
Well, we'll
I
try to
on
go.
5 today.
We'll try to go through there, and I did actually, on the agenda, put some notes in here so that we could kind of direct what I was talking about when I was doing it. Anyhow, let's start with the Stantec questions. I wondered if Suzanne or Mel, if you guys had a chance to look at those, or
I did. I have
a few. Okay.
I don't know, and I mean, just to make it easier for me, I was just hoping for a summary. Just basically, are we in a position where we can do anything about it?
That's a great question.
That's all. I guess that's all I want to know. Because I'm already mad. I don't want to go over all the details of what we can't do anything about. What can we do something about? Question.
Okay. All right. Well, then what I'll do is I'll take that as our first question, and then I'll put my kind of more itemized questions down. And then Suzanne, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? I know you had a couple when we were talking, so I'll kind of incorporate all of them and get them to Mr. Zetz. So that's number one.
Thank you.
And then two, update to Licking Heights school improvements. The question in my mind since our last street committee meeting, we were looking for a response from the school to the Jobes and Henderson review of the traffic study.
Typically, if the committee would like Jobes to speak, we would need a motion from the committee allowing them to.
Well, let's start with, did Licking Heights respond to their review?
We had a meeting with Licking Heights where we reviewed that review.
Oh, okay. Were you there with that?
I was.
Okay. Do you feel like Jobes should answer that before?
I think it would be good for Jobes to weigh in, so somebody can make a motion.
I'll make a motion that Jobes is able to address the committee.
Second.
Roll.
Walther.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Hayes. Yes.
Okay. Jim? And I know you had a...
Should be in the packet.
Is it? Okay, here we go. Perfect. All right.
So, we did offer some comments to the Licking Heights School District on the traffic study, and I think we talked about some of those a little bit at the last street committee meeting. Actually, the street committee meeting was right after that, and we did meet with the district. I don't think there were any major issues or concerns where we were far apart on those. There were some detail items. I think an important piece of the discussion as we stand here today was we had indicated in our comments that we didn't agree with well, I wouldn't say we didn't agree. We didn't know whether we should agree with their growth projections that they used in the traffic study. So we reached out to Morpsey, who does growth projections in their entire footprint, which we in Pataskar are part of. And we did get back growth projections from Morpsey that they recommend be used for that study. And they were higher growth rates than what had been included in the traffic study. So that information was forwarded on to the city and the BJ. I don't know, has that been forwarded on to the consultant yet, or do you?
We just talked about that this morning.
Okay.
Alan's going to get it to me, and I'm going to get it over to the consultant.
Okay. Okay. So that's one piece of information that will impact the study. I don't anticipate it to be a major impact on their recommendations. It might extend some turn lanes. It might make some engineering tweaks to it, but I don't think the major recommendations that are of interest to the council will be dramatically impacted. They have not formally responded since the meeting that I've seen to our comments or to the questions and discussions that we had in that meeting, and that would be about 6 to 8 weeks ago that meeting would have occurred. So it's been out there for quite a while. So that's kind of where the traffic study stands, I think, in terms of the city's role. And in my opinion, other than maybe getting them the growth rate projections, I think the ball is in their court in terms of the traffic study.
Okay, you had mentioned on a couple of these things, and I'll just review it real quick. You know, talking about crash history wasn't included. Did you guys talk about that at the meeting?
We actually looked up the crash history. We did talk about the meeting, and they didn't have that information, so we looked up the crash history. And interestingly, none of the places that are included in the study show significant crash
Okay.
history.
That's good.
And actually, in a weird kind of way, you almost wish they do, because that introduces the opportunity for safety funds. But they don't, so that doesn't work to our advantage.
You mentioned in here that in your traffic counts itself, the numbers don't add up. Did you guys find the anomalies, I guess I would put it as, in
Yes.
their reports?
So we have asked them to just correct that. We weren't gonna try to figure out their work for them. And that's one of the things that would be expected to be coming back in a revised traffic study. My assumption, and I honestly don't know, they've never said this directly, but my assumption is they must have been waiting for those growth projections to just tidy everything up at once. I would have rather have seen everything but the growth rate projections come back to us, because there are no outstanding comments that they don't know about other than that one. But again, that ball's kind of in their court right now.
Okay. Mel, Sue, Suzanne, do you have any questions on that?
I thought that was interesting with the safety funds, and I always like to hear that. I mean, the different things that you don't think about.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing to hope you have a
Yeah.
safety problem, but that
But
there's a
it-
giant
but
pot
it
of
allows
money.
for funding, yeah.
If you could, BJ, clarify for me again, because we've talked about a typical developer and what we would expect when it came to intersection improvements. So what would be expected of a typical developer?
For a typical development, we would really just have them improve their access points. So any new entrances they're putting to their development. And we have not done any in the past where we have required intersection improvements, at least since I've been here.
Okay.
Can I qualify that? Just let me ask, on Broad Street, for instance, the new development that's happening there, you know, where turn lanes and signals were put in, that would be something I would consider to be more than just an access point. That's an increased upgrade due to traffic flow. And I assume that was from the fire, remember that was a fire requirement?
It was, and I guess the difference that I would qualify on that is it was not an existing intersection, it was one that they put in for access to their subdivision, and increased improvements were required due to having only one entrance.
Okay, so in this case, these are all existing intersections?
The intersections that are there, yeah, the ones that we looked at are Cable and Mink and Cable and Summit that we looked at in the study.
Okay, what about where they're entering and exiting the roadway?
There's one existing access which they were talking about extending, and then there's two proposed access points where they have put in there to put turn lanes in.
Yeah, I know, Mel, I'm just qualifying to make sure we're talking about the same thing. Is it existing intersections, or is it the new intersection of a high school entrance?
Right.
I may be asking both, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I was just asking, period, when there's a developer, what we would typically require. I mean, to me, Broad Street seems like, that development to me seems different only because that's a 50-mile-an-hour roadway with probably a lot higher traffic, you know, than what our typical development would see. I think that one probably stands out, just for me it does, a little bit. So I guess what I was just trying to determine was how, what we would expect of the school district when it came to the traffic flow, especially with Morphe's estimates being higher than their traffic study, because, I mean, the district has openly talked about in like 2025, 26, adding an elementary school on that same site. And there's just, I just think it's a bigger issue that's more widespread than just Cable and Summit intersection.
Well, I think that one of your other items that was commented in here from the report was that the internal traffic really wasn't discussed. And I can bring up, you know, I've seen Summit, for instance, where the internal traffic, the drop-off area is potentially causing problems out onto Summit.
Oh, it is,
Okay,
for sure.
it definitely is.
Well, and I
Checkles.
can say, just having seen their schematics and kind of being part of it is a little, I've kind of watched as it's happened. And, from the sites internally, from the high school, what will be the new high school, to what is the existing high school gonna be the middle school, they do have a traffic plan in there to go in between the two, which I think will help some of the roadway issues. However, that doesn't stop all the additional traffic that's gonna be there. I'm just looking at now, if, you know, when you have kids that go to the middle school, they would travel via Broad or probably Cleveland over. There's probably very few that just come straight down Summit and hit the middle school. So I'm just thinking about all of that additional traffic that would be headed north versus east, just over to the middle school. I mean, the intersection at Taylor and Havens Corners, you cannot
It's
get through
difficult.
there in the mornings.
It's very difficult now.
Because people are trying to turn left, and the traffic is just a steady flow coming, you know, from the Gahanna area. So I think that's when I say it's a bigger issue. It's pushed, you know, they have kids from Blacklick that attend the district, so. BJ?
I do, I just wanna piggyback on what Alan said, when we're looking at this, what would we make a developer do? And you mentioned, you know, improve the access and have safe ingress and egress to their property. That's exactly what the school is committed to doing with this. At their current one, they've, I believe, Jim, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're gonna have to make some improvements there to extend the turn lane, to have some additional stacking.
Correct.
And they may be doing that internally as well, I can't remember. But then they're also gonna be putting the proper turn lanes for their new facility as well. So they're addressing those. And similar to Broadmoor did on Broad Street with, hey, we need a turn lane in here for ingress and egress, they did that, that's their responsibility to do. So the school is going to be making those improvements, they've committed to that for ingress and egress to their property.
Well, and I guess when I'm talking about the bigger issues and you look at the design of the roads out there as they are now, what I wanna know is if there's, I mean, the school district obviously doesn't have money to do it, the city doesn't have money to do it. Is there a source that we can reach out to for grant funding or anything of that nature that would look at that entire area to help us with that? Because clearly, you know, it's the second fastest growing district in the area. We have, I mean, next to Olentangy, then we have, you know, it's huge. Is there something more that we can do?
Alan, did you have an answer for that? I mean,
So
any
to some
ideas?
extent, the first step that is I put in a CIP project to start in 2019 to study our top intersections. And in my mind, we've got three that are certainly a problem. One is Summit and Broad, one is Summit and Havens Corners, one's Taylor and Havens Corners. To look at those, and so far as capacity and safety, rank those in priority, take our top priority, start engineering and right-of-way acquisition potentially in 2020, and then go for OPWC funding with that. And at this point, we haven't, it was 2 years ago that we had an OPWC project that was awarded. We haven't applied for anything this year. We probably won't next year, so by that time we should be ripe for OPWC funding, which that I think would score pretty well, at least to get started on that, and then hopefully, you know, recycle that on a 3-year plus or minus basis to start addressing those.
And I guess that's what I was looking for is, I just need to know there's a plan. I want us to not be on the backside of things. So if we're looking, you know, if that is what our goal is and that's the path we're gonna take, I would like to see that, you know, written and put out there so we can make that public, that we are addressing it. Because that's one of the #1 complaints I get is, you know, the traffic, especially now.
And I guess, Jim, the other question, I know they studied intersections and that kind of stuff and stacking and so forth, but did they actually, or would you suggest that they actually look at the quality of the road? And I mean by quality, I mean width, capability, you know, are these gonna be able to pass 2 buses? That's really, I think, what makes a road successful or not. When you can't pass 2 buses, it's a serious problem, especially at a high school.
Sure.
So I guess I would ask that question.
So that's not a comment that we made, and in my mind, and I guess this is a good time for this discussion, because we may not all be on the same page and we can get ourselves on the same page. In my mind, I think that would be something that we would look at as the city, and I think that's where Alan was headed with some of this capital improvements money, that it would be hard for me to say to the school, when there's already a school there, that all of a sudden our roads, they have to help us pay for our roads that can't get buses there. So that's a delicate one, and it's not something that we included in the study. It's certainly something we could, or it's also something that we could just look at as the city.
I mean, I personally don't think it's the school's responsibility to widen the roadways.
Well, can I give you an example why I bring that up? Like, for instance, Franklin County requires that any developer that develops on a county road improves their road to have a 4-foot shoulder. If they have ditches, if they are a road and ditch system, they absolutely require them to put a 4-foot shoulder on. And the reason being is they want to make them safe. There's more traffic's there, more
Sure.
possible breakdowns, that kind of stuff. There's even going to be pedestrian traffic, more pedestrian traffic in the area. So that's a requirement of Franklin County. It's only an example, but they don't just look at intersections. They look at the quality of the roadway as far as the traveling public goes. So anyhow, I don't want to beat this too much. We've got to keep going here.
One more comment. The only thing I would say is a typical, when we say developer, I think we need to distinguish the fact that we're talking about a public school district and not a for-profit company. We're not talking about Facebook or Amazon. We're talking about a school district who had to go on a ballot to get money to even build to house the kids that are in the area. So they certainly, it's not like they're gonna be raking in money from the building that's sitting there,
Right.
any sort of profit. So that's why I would say, when I'm looking at this situation, I personally, while I think they should have to do the same that we would require of the basics we require of anybody else, I would not go above and beyond and say they had to widen the roads. I don't think that's their responsibility. Just my vote.
Thanks, Jim. Anything further discussions planned with the school at this point?
We have been talking to them, and I know Scott was gonna be setting up a meeting with them to review some of the questions and stuff that came up at BZA with their conditional use as well.
Okay, because I just got a notice that they're having a groundbreaking September 26th. I just let you know that. Okay, great. Anything else on that? All right, number 3, Oak Meadow Drive update. Alan, could you, how's everything going with the easement for the storm? BJ, how's everything going with the storm?
And I know we have 2 things to talk about this. The easement, we met with the resident out there, walked through everything, explained what we needed. He had a concern about a big bush at the corner of his property line that he would like to keep. It does provide some privacy to his place, and I told him I agree with him and I'd want the same thing as him. So we just, I think late last week or so, got the revised easement document that shows that bush remaining. We had to move the easement a little bit to the south in order to do that, and I've left a message with the resident so we can schedule a time to get out there and talk to him.
Okay, is this
Yeah.
holding anything up at this point?
It's not.
Okay.
Yeah, and the plans are complete. The only thing is, if he's good with this alignment with the new easement, we're shifting the storm sewer over to accommodate that. So some small tweaks to the plans. Other than that, the plans are good to go.
Okay. Great, that's good news.
Question, quick.
Go right ahead.
I see Mr. Rath's letter.
Okay, yep, that's
Anything
next on
on
the list.
that?
Yep, that's next.
Okay.
So the comments that came up in council, the letter that was written to Alan back at the end of July. Go ahead, Suzanne, why don't you go?
Well, I
you start
understand
us
his
off.
question. I mean, he has a family member who would require use of the sidewalk to be used for wheelchair access. So I understand his son is in a wheelchair. So I understand why he would want, he's asking about the sidewalk, right? Is that the question about he wants concrete versus a path?
Correct.
Is that the question?
He, from what I understood, he wants that for aesthetic reasons.
Oh.
That-
So he wants a 5-foot concrete sidewalk as opposed to an 8-foot walking path.
Right.
Go ahead.
I'll
sorry.
say I agree with Andy when he spoke to council. you know, the path would provide the same level of mobility as a sidewalk would, and actually might provide a little better with it being
Okay,
wider.
and it's not gonna wash away?
No, it's an
Well, no,
asphalt
it's an
path.
asphalt path.
Okay.
Yeah, similar like we have at Municipal Park, an asphalt
So
path.
it's asphalt as opposed to concrete, so
Yes.
either way, the mobility is fine for a wheelchair, but
Yes.
he wants it for the aesthetic purpose that he wants it all to look and blend
Absolutely.
the right way.
Well, if I understand his letter, he's saying that that's what's through the rest of the city. Or he cites other places where there was, concrete sidewalks placed, but, I don't know, does he understand that the city didn't put those sidewalks in?
That's a good question.
Yeah, those
I
are
think
developer
that's not-
installed.
That's
We,
not.
we installed some of them, but not all of them. I mean, we did
Right.
some a couple
Or
years,
grant
5, 6
funded.
years ago.
We replaced some that were deteriorated already.
But we didn't do,
But we
we
don't
don't do
go.
them a lot.
I guess I would just say, and I can certainly appreciate his, you know, his ask for, you know, if that's aesthetically what they want. But at this point, I would say, you know, the extent that this project has gone from where it started, that I would be unwilling to do anything further. That's my opinion.
And go ahead.
If I can just make a couple general comments as we discuss this. Making, as Alan pointed out, the plans are pretty much ready to go out to bid and will be coming to council in the very near future seeking authorization to go out to bid with the anticipation of starting construction in the spring on this. If we were to go making significant plane changes, that certainly is not gonna occur this year, getting authorization to go out to bid, and we probably wouldn't be bidding until after the first of the year. Second thing I wanna say is we review these, and I remember Annie and I talked about this, when we went into this project, there were three main goals. One was to improve the driving surface. One was to improve the drainage down there so we can make sure that we're not wasting our money. And three was to provide a safe access for pedestrian bikers to the park. What has been designed does all three of those.
Now, I'm gonna go one step further. We looked at this option, we looked at a variety of options, including this option, and found that it wasn't feasible because there were a number of easements that were required, there were utilities in the way, there were all kinds of things that were problematic. And I don't think anybody's standing up, I don't think there's a group of people standing up saying, we're gonna donate every easement you want. And certainly the utilities aren't easy to move. So this is, I mean, this has been I don't know how long it's been a while since we started this project, and, or at least designing it, and I think that the other part I would say is, you know, the subdivision did not have sidewalks. It doesn't have anything that even resembles sidewalks. So a bike path is an improvement to their property, whether they think it's an improvement or not, it is an improvement. And it connects two different subdivisions via a bike lane, Hazelwood, and then what's the back one called back there?
Oh,
I don't remember.
not Broadmoor.
I forget what it's called.
Broadview Crossing.
Broadview Crossing. So it actually does work. If you were to do some kind of trail analysis, it's a good, it actually is a good planning item. So I'm going to be I'm with Mel on this, is I don't feel that we should move forward. Don't think we should change direction, and I believe we've got a very good plan for that residential development to be improved.
Okay.
I just want to point out one thing, and that's that, and I'm not sure how many residents realize this, but typically with an asphalt path, the city maintains that, whereas a sidewalk, the resident will be responsible for that.
Correct.
Well, and that was my other point, is I don't know if they, you know, if they realize that ultimately the sidewalks, they would be responsible for maintaining and repairing while the asphalt path is on us. So, that's a deal.
And there's a lot of maintenance with it.
There's a lot.
We have to be aware of that, because there is a lot of
For sure.
maintenance with an
There's a lot of
asphalt
maintenance.
path. It just is, so. I
Can I
think
just
we're-
say one more thing? So
Sure.
my recommendation, and it sounds like consistent, is that we continue the path with the scope we have, move forward with getting authorization to bid it out as it is.
Both literally and figuratively.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on Oak Meadow? How about it, yeah, please, go ahead.
On the schedule,
Yep.
what we're hoping to do here is, provided we get the easement and all that goes smoothly, on October 16th, we would advertise, open bids, November 13th, and be ready to award at the December 3rd council meeting. That's what we're hoping for. So we'd be seeking a resolution to authorize bidding probably in September or early October.
I don't need anything from us for that.
We don't.
Okay, great. All right, Main Street AEP easements, hopefully this is a quick one.
It will be.
Great, go ahead, EJ.
As we know, we have the two remaining, I don't wanna say their names, one resident, does not want the box buried, or does not want the box in the front yard, concerned about children crawling on it, and then also told me that they're concerned that they'll never be able to sell their house, and their property values will plummet once that thing is there. AEP is giving them an ultimatum that they can either have a pole in their backyard or a box in their front to do this. Chad Miller with AEP is reaching out to them for that. The other resident I've been talking to, they're not real crazy about the box either. They're also concerned about a tree or a small decorative tree that's in their front yard. AEP does have a program that within 12 months, if anything happens to that tree, they'll pay to replace it. So I talked to them again today. They're getting ready to go on vacation. September 17th, I'm supposed to call them, set up a meeting for city, AEP, and electrician to meet out there so we can explain the boring process to them to get the service to their house, which we're going to be doing anyways. And AEP can explain the program they have about the tree if anything was ever to happen. So we are extremely close to getting these.
How big of a tree is this?
It's a decorative tree that's in a planting. I don't know what kind it is. I mean,
Is it like a 2-inch tree, 4-inch tree?
It branches out a lot. Probably 3 or 4 inch tree, if that.
So,
It's one of these that comes out of the ground and goes everywhere. So,
gotcha. So it's a multi-stem ornamental.
yes.
Gotcha.
All added up, all stems are probably, I don't know.
No, multi-stem, you qualify in height, but
Yes, multi-stem tree coming out of the ground.
With a-
They're concerned about it dying, so we're gonna explain
Yeah.
boring, how deep they go and everything, and then AEP
Yeah.
does have the program that within 12 months and
Could-
may-
If everybody was in agreement, can we, I mean, you're talking about less than $500 for a tree.
yes, we are.
Okay.
And the previous easement discussion that we had, we were talking less than $500 for a potential tree, so yes,
Okay.
I
Seems like that we could get over that hurdle.
see what you're saying.
Okay, wonderful. All right, any other questions on that? So it sounds like it's moving along. We're gonna have some meetings
I
mid-September.
would say by mid-September, everything will be wrapped up.
It's a wrap.
Then you can take my picture off your dartboard.
It's not yours that's on there, Suzanne.
All righty, wonderful.
Fine, somebody's is. I can give you one.
How about, okay, on to number 6. Broadview Crossing drainage. Hopefully this one's quick too.
Oh, number 5.
I'm sorry, number 5. Drainage projects, a prioritized list.
Okay, so I've got in the packet a new, an updated major drainage issues report. Some of those have changed a little bit, and right behind that, I've got a spreadsheet that shows project cost and time frame summary. I only went out 7 years with this. I think beyond that, there's not terribly fruitful. One of the big things to notice, well, first I'll say I reprioritized these. I tried to go based on severity, effect on public infrastructure, and I'll say perceived available budget. So I certainly welcome any comments on how I've gone about that, or if we think things are different, and welcome that discussion. One of the key things I want to point out, which is actually kind of later on the agenda, but affects this substantially, is Graham Road. During my department meeting here a few weeks back, Jerry Geiger, who's been, well, he's with the township since 1986 and is still with us, asked us why we were doing this project, because I mentioned it because we put a 15-inch in the ground in that same location in the early 2000s, which of course we did not know about, which is of course a great reason to do our GIS and get all the infrastructure mapped. So after looking at that, we realized, well, maybe we don't need to do this. Maybe the problem is just local to where the water's getting on the road. So two-phased approach here. One called Strand up, said, hey, can we change direction on this? Take a look at that existing 15-inch. We'll give you a rough location, model it to see if what size storm it will handle, and if we think it's going to be sufficient moving forward and don't need to replace it. That's kind of what we're thinking right now, and of course that would save what we had slated for a $250,000 project next year, and then we would be able to go in-house after looking at this again and just extend that storm sewer to the east in front of Mr. Fife's property and maybe a little bit further. And currently there's, we call them bird cages. Basically it's the pipe is teed up and then there's just a
Trash
trap that's on it, and those are small, and we think it's just not able to get into the storm sewer. So, and that storm sewer that's there is single wall, and it's old, and it's probably no good. So we would extend that out, put a couple 2x2 catch basins in, something the water would actually be able to get into, and that we can do that in-house for less than $20,000 and have a significant savings. And then similarly move up the next drainage project, which of course my list is the Taylor Road project, where we could actually start doing design on that one next year. Potentially study and see if we need design on that. So we might be able to do that without a whole lot of design, is what we're currently thinking.
Well, that's good news.
That's great news.
That's good. As long, hopefully it will handle it and
Yeah.
so forth. That's great. Okay. So I think we probably need to digest this a little bit. Quite frankly, just read through it and just see if there's anything good.
I'll just say, with with that being the case, doing this in-house and spending time looking at all of these and having this list, are there any of these others on here that we're gonna be able to potentially accomplish in-house that could result in some potential savings in the future as well?
So there's some notes that I've put in the body of this. I guess there's a couple ways of looking at a few different ones of these. So Taylor Road's a good example where there's pipe down both sides, but it's an amalgamation of clay tile, single wall pipe. We think it might just not be in very good shape, not laid at the right slope. So we could potentially do a study to see maybe we could upsize that pipe and make it the proper slope and not have to actually do design on that, and just go straight to a contractor with that, which could potentially save us money.
When you say, just so everybody's clear on that, what you're saying is increase the size of the pipe, which could be laid at the same slope, therefore transmit the water because it's at a lesser slope.
So, right, and it would be more of a replacement project
Right.
than a brand new project, so
Right.
we wouldn't need easements and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
Halloon Lane is another good example. Now, according to the study, it's a $800,000 to $1.2 million fix. We've talked a little bit with Bob Carr, who's working on the putting tile in the field next to it. I've talked to a couple of the residents who have issues out there. I'm supposed to talk with a couple more to see they're interested in giving us easements, and those are things where Mr. Carr's planning to improve the drainage swale that runs through the farm field. And if he makes that a little bit deeper and extends that a little bit, we could probably do some in-house work to start those tie-ins, kind of chip them off a little bit at a time, get an easement here, easement there, do work, just kind of whittle away at it, so to say, where I think we could do that a lot cheaper. So, I mean, the numbers that I put in here are worst case scenario if we've got to go through full design and bid these out for a contractor, but I do think there's ways that we can make them cheaper.
Okay. That'd be helpful, obviously. That'd be great. Okay, I think that's the exact question I was gonna ask, was is there anything else that jumps to the top of the list that can be done, even though we're not quite confident yet that Graham Road can be taken off the list essentially, but hopefully it can. All right. Any questions on the prioritized list? This is good. Obviously we need to kind of digest and we'll bring it up in the next meeting.
And I would just say, Alan, this is great, especially with the spreadsheet. And I think that hopefully as we go along and we start identifying some of these things, we continue to find situations where it's not as bad as we thought, or there's ways to save money, but that we should definitely in some manner keep this updated for future use. As we go down the line 15 years from now, somebody can go back and say, well, in 2020 they XYZ on this road. So we don't leave future people in the same position we are now.
I'd even go further to say I'd like to share this with the rest of council in its condition that it's in now. Just go ahead and can we provide this in the council packet?
Yeah, we'll provide this in the September 4th council packet.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing just to have to know what we're talking about.
We'll do the report and the spreadsheet.
Perfect. I think it's a great idea. Okay. Anything else on that? Okay. Broadview Crossing drainage?
One more thing on that. The next item that I provided in that is the minor summary drainage projects. So if you want to take a look at that, I've grayed out everything we've already done, and that's most of the list actually. And then there are a few other projects on here, and a couple, 2 or 3 of those we're still planning to get to this year. So we're chipping away at that and doing pretty good at making those improvements. So just wanted to give you an update on that as well.
Are these in a priority, or are these just, you know, items in a random order?
These were more or less in a random order.
Okay.
We've tried to prioritize them, one with our schedule and 2 with the severity, as we've moved along through them.
I would put this right with it too.
But all drainage.
It's all drains.
Oh.
We will provide all things drainage
Yeah.
to council.
Okay, okay. So one item I know that's probably in your list, Broadview Crossing drainage. Can you give us an update on that project particularly, I guess?
Do you want to start with that, BJ?
So I've been working with the foundation
Go
on
ahead.
that. So we had meetings with 2 of the residents out there about this. We have secured an easement from the Evans Foundation to be able to install a swale on Evans Foundation property that will allow these residents to essentially get their water to that swale out of their yards and into the creek. Heard today with a request, they're working with a contractor, asking for some dates that folks from Jobs and Allen can meet out there with the contractor. We're getting those together, should be able to provide those dates tomorrow to the resident, and they can get it. I know they're working towards getting cost estimates for that work.
So
Easement
this'll-
is secured, and
So will the residents have some type of license or some type of temporary easement to get on the ground to do the construction work?
yes, there will be a
Okay.
temporary construction easement and a permanent easement
Okay,
for us to maintain moving forward.
fantastic. That's good. All right. Any questions, any further questions on that? All right. Broad and Mink 2, Signal Phase 1, kind of an update on the Mink project.
So, Mink 3, the intersection improvements, the change order was completed, the underground and boring work was completed, which I know we had some traffic issues because they hit a gas main. That's been taken care of. The signal foundations have been poured. They're in the cure process right now, and we're expecting them to start erecting the mast arms in the next week to 2 weeks. And once those are up, the rest of the work should go pretty quickly.
We're still looking at the end of the year for that to open up.
So this is just the intersection.
Okay.
And the intersection, I would expect to be operational with, definitely within a month and a half, probably much sooner.
The Mink and Broad intersection.
The Mink and Broad intersection, yes.
That opens up Mink in that direction again?
Just the
Just to
intersection.
the-
So that's just
intersection.
getting the signal
We're
at the
not
intersection,
talking-
so.
okay.
Right,
Okay, so Phase 1 schedule.
okay, so that's, it's phase 2 actually.
Okay, phase 2.
These
I know,
things
I
have
probably-
all sorts of
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah,
I
they're-
know, I'm lost with
They
numbers.
were-
We
they
need
were
a spreadsheet
operational.
on that, Al.
Just landmarks.
Well,
landmarks.
we've numbered them out of order when they're constructed, to be honest with you. I don't know why that ever happened.
Okay. So I guess I would say the stuff that's under construction now,
Yes.
and I thought I understood from ODOT that was like a Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3.
Okay.
So do you want me to use ODOT nomenclature?
Well, so there's 3 or 4 different phases of the whole Mink Street project, and then within Mink Phase 2, there are 3 phases within that. So why were they named that way? I don't know the answer, but that's the way what we're working on.
Okay.
So on that project, we'll call them Section 1 and Section 2, just to make it clear, of Phase 2. They're currently working on both of those. They anticipate having both of those done with the exception of the surface course of asphalt this year. Section 3 of that, which runs from Columbia to, so then roughly November, they'll probably open this back up for the winter months and then close it back down for Section 3, which runs from Columbia to just north of Havens Corners, to complete Section 3 next year. And then when that's all finished, they'll put the final surface course of asphalt on the whole thing. That is their current plan. Otherwise, it's, I haven't heard of any issues, and at least to that schedule, it's tracking on that schedule.
Okay. Anything else on that? Anybody? All right. On to the Depot Street parking, and I don't know that we just limit this to Depot Street, but it could be other streets downtown, but Depot Street was the one we were calling it, so. Depot Street parking, the limited 2-hour, well, there was the 2-hour parking issue, and then there was some additional problems during the street fair.
Correct.
Okay.
people unloading and loading.
Yeah, if
people-
I can go ahead, the depot, the 2 hour, all the time, excluding street fair, there are signs up, that's an enforcement issue that the police would have to enforce that 2 hour parking. We have talked to the police about it, they're aware of the issue, to get out and start chalking and doing all of that stuff. I know with their manpower can do that. So, that continues to be an issue, I guess we could say. It strictly comes down to enforcement. I would never say remove those signs because then we're just opening it up to everything. So it certainly is an enforcement issue. The other issue we had during the street fair is I think it's Walnut Street, east of 310. There are a couple businesses there, one that gets deliveries daily of fresh flowers. Also have to get deliveries out to customers. What happens during the street fair is it's closed at 310 and Walnut, and then people visiting the fair, people working vendors just fill that street 3 across, and no deliveries can get in there. So kind of just, that business is kind of just out of luck during that week. We worked with them this year. We did get a sign put out there, access for local businesses only, or building tenants, I forget exactly what it said. That didn't work. First day we got a report from, hey, we have this going on, so I know the police went out, and also some of the fire association folks had them move some of but as a long term, we need to figure out, we being the city, how we can help these businesses there. During the street fair, and I was surprised by this, their walk-in business is very, very limited during the street fair because you don't have people down at the street fair saying, hey, let's go look for some flowers. So their walk-in business during the fair is impacted during this. And then it's sort of business that you can't order everything ahead of time and say, well, during the fair we'll be fine.
Right,
So I told them this is something that I'm committed to trying to solve, and even if it has to be, no parking, we passed an ordinance that says during this week, no fair parking or something, so we can enforce, right now the police can't enforce anything.
Well, can I ask real quick, because I'm wondering why they couldn't, and I'm thinking about fire protection for those buildings, for those premises. If you're parking 3 across, nobody's getting in there. I mean, not even a fire truck or an ambulance, whatever.
Well, even if it's just on each side of that, they're not gonna be able to get the delivery trucks in. There is very limited parking on that road, day in and day out, and they don't have the issue. I don't know if some things I thought about, is there an ordinance that is enforced during the street fair that no street fair parking, or no parking except for local businesses? Kind of tough to see who's who. Or do we go in there and we stripe a loading zone that people aren't allowed to park in, and during that time, if they're parked in that loading zone similar to fire lane, you're gone.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that we could do. I know Alan, as the public services director, has the authority to state where those go. Talking to the business owner, I said, we don't want to put up no parking signs because that applies to you then as well. And we can't start having the police ask who is who. So I feel bad. I don't think we should let the fair impact those local businesses down there like this. I mean, that's a week long during the fair that they are just impacted their business and their livelihood.
We get.
Which one?
Go ahead.
No, I just was curious because this just seems to get worse every year, and our downtown, with all of the improvements, is flourishing, and our businesses are doing better, and is there any way that we could issue some sort of permit parking system where if they didn't
You're going right
have
down the path.
like if they didn't have a permit,
We
like a displayed permit, they would get ticketed?
Well, can I
We need-
piggyback off of that?
need a plan.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, and what has worked, and it worked beautiful this year, is that when the electric went in, now, the other side of Walnut, where my house is, when the electric went in, and then the house went in with the driveway coming out, so the traffic pattern changed on, I don't wanna say my road, but the other side of Walnut, that sign works fantastic. Nobody parked in there, and they used to be blocking the electric for the fair, or they were blocking driveways, and it didn't work, it worked beautifully. So I don't know if the same thing can be done on the other side of Walnut with the barricade and the vinyl sign that says permit parking only, and like what Mel said, those folks are given a permit that they hang, or you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, but it works really, this year we had not one single issue.
That may be the best option, is to have something made up, permit parking only, work with the businesses, how many permits.
Business only.
And I know there's an apartment above one of the businesses too, that the person can't park there, so I think if we could do it just for permit parking there.
And it's
We
really
have
just
other
the whole
places
strip
to-
of Walnut.
Right, we have other places to park down there, I know the parking lots get full. Alan and I have talked about some other options of creating some other parking areas down in that area specifically, and not to steal your thunder, at the water treatment plant. You know, it's not that far away, we could easily put in a gravel lot, there's plenty of land there. And it doesn't have to just be for the street fair, you know, we do have a trail that starts there as well. That people can park there and get on and walk up through town and do all that. So I think there are options. I do like the option for permit parking. I think that's something that's certainly enforceable. And it's easy for the police to go down through there. If you don't have it displayed,
And
you're gone.
And I wonder, can you even take that to the Depot Street also? Could you say, I mean, some of that is business parking, and that could be limited down to certain hours?
I think we can do it for any of the roads down there we need to, is just have those, we come up with permits, have them laminated. If they have delivery drivers, give them the delivery driver during that week, so when they come in there, they have a permit.
as far as Depot goes, there are people that live in the apartments behind Mama Linda's that have 3 cars. There are residents that have 3 cars. And they're bop, bop, bop. So they're there all day and they're there all night and they're
Well, that's
not
what I'm saying,
moving.
that would be the people you would enforce.
Well,
Everybody
they,
gets,
and I hate to say this because where else are they gonna park? They don't have a parking lot that's residential parking for an apartment that doesn't provide parking for his residents. So what they're forced to do in their minds is to park in business parking, which doesn't allow for any of the businesses to
have their customers.
businesses,
and
good
utilize the
business,
parking.
right.
Something else I was thinking, if there was options to put gravel lots, like you were saying, like down by the water treatment plant, or maybe in some different areas, we could also do some sort of a shuttle, you know, for people to run
Haskell
back and
Oaks
forth.
used to be able to do that, like they had their
Right.
fun bus and they would shuttle like they used to do.
Right, so, you know, and, I mean, you might be able to get people to do it for like donations or something, but, so there's maybe a shuttle that goes back and forth, because, you know, sometimes people have, it's harder if you have small children or, you know, somebody who, you know, needs some additional assistance. But I think that we need to get creative, because the street fair is consuming the residents and the businesses down there. And so we need to put some controls in place.
That is true for the street fair, but I
Thank you.
think outside of the street fair too, you know, I think back to, you know, having a park somewhere off campus, for instance, you know, and finding a church that would allow you to park in their parking lot during the week. Now, you had to get out of there on Sunday,
Right.
but you could park there during the week. You know, I'm just trying to think of some ideas where some of these residents, I feel for the residents too, that they need a place to park, but that's a business parking spot, not a residential parking spot.
Well, when there's three spots taken by one resident,
Right,
it gets
that's problematic, so.
kind of
Okay,
like
so I guess the only thing
shaker.
I wanted to ask from the street committee's point of view, and now I know we haven't given you a chance to talk yet, but just if we get some kind of formulation of a plan that we can start to digest and understand that we want him to take forward to council and say this is what we think, whether it's an ordinance during street fair or a letter that goes out to the apartment saying, look, you got 2-hour parking, and if you've got more than one car, you better find another place for your spare cars.
Even if we had like a deadline, starting October 1st, this,
Still have time.
although it's already on the sign, we are going to start to enforce it and give them a date, October 1st, so that way they can start planning, or September, you know what I'm saying?
Find
So-
alternatives.
Find alternatives, speak to your landlord, I don't know, you know what I'm saying, but I think there needs to be a deadline on it, that when it's going to start, so that way we don't just start throwing tickets on their car
Right.
when it's never been enforced, but we need to start an enforcement deadline.
So it's two-pronged,
So
all the
that's a-
time, 2-hour parking, and then also we'll come up with something to
And
address
that's a
the fair
police
for
issue
business
also,
parking.
like, when will they begin the enforcement of it?
Right, and I've gotta talk to
And it
them.
needs to be consistent, because I think on that road, anywhere on that road, people are like, they don't worry about it, just it's 2-hour parking, it doesn't matter how long you're here, it's okay.
We need to make sure though that when we start talking, permit parking and things like that, that we definitely talk to the businesses down there so they feel like they're part of that decision and that process and not like it's happening to them.
Right.
That we're supporting them.
They're already having things happen to them. So, you know, to kind of let them know, look, we're doing this for you, and we can issue a certain amount of
I can do that. I
permits,
can
and we
walk around.
could, just to make sure everybody understands the process, and with, you know, and not hinder the street fair, you know, either, so.
Okay, fantastic.
Solving the world's problems, Alan, take notes.
One by one.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so next one is the street program itself, for an update.
So for the 2018 ramp, we have the contracts currently. We're getting those signed. I think BJ signed them today. I'll be getting those back to Strand and get those distributed. And then we should be having a pre-construction meeting here within the next 2 weeks and start hopefully very soon thereafter to get this year's done. And of course, we just finished up, well, we'll be finishing up tomorrow, the culverts on Headley's Mill. We replaced all those and we're getting the concrete in today and tomorrow. So we should be ready on our end.
And once the work starts, it should go pretty quickly, weather permitting.
Yes.
So do you believe that you'll be starting the actual installation sometime in October? Or you think it's gonna be mid-September? Or do you
I'm
think
hoping
you are?
for mid to late September.
Mid to late September, got it. Any questions on that? Anything that the contractors brought up that's been a problem or an issue for them?
No,
Pretty straightforward?
pretty straightforward.
Okay. Did you have another comment?
Well, I was gonna say, I think before the next thing, we'd want, oh, no, actually, it's the next topic, never mind.
So the next topic, if there's nothing else on that, is the 2019 budget for the streets. And putting together the plans for our ramp.
Yes.
Any issues with that? Any?
So there's 3 topics there. One is who we would want to go with for design. Of course, we put on RFP this year. We had 3 qualified designers. We picked one of them, so I thought we'd use that same list and pick the next one up, kind of use a round robin approach maybe and kind of run through those. So the next on that list, as we did Job's the year before and Strand this year, would be GPD Group. I think they're qualified and could do a good job for us as well if we want to try that route.
As far as the cost, were all of them relatively, so you put out an RFP, so you got your.
So the RFP doesn't.
RFQ, we did an RFQ.
Right,
Oh,
the
sorry,
RFQ is
RFQ.
qualified,
Yeah.
yeah, so the only concern I would have about that is just making sure we had competitive, costs
So
for the project.
For the engineering services, I guess we can't do an RFP, we can't get the cost proposals, but we would certainly get a cost proposal from them individually and make sure that it was in line with what we expect.
We'll run it like the ODOT process where you have your
I
list.
see, yeah.
And then if you can't come to an agreeable price with number 1,
Just go
to
down number 2.
You got it.
Which would be whatever the way you're doing it is,
Yes.
okay.
Okay.
Do you ever see any problem with doing it that way if we didn't actually get an RFQ for this year? Okay.
Well, so we already got an RFQ for this year, and we're hoping to do the design for the 2019, at least get the contract
I'm
signed,
sorry,
to
I
start doing it
misspoke,
this
for
year.
19, you didn't get an RFQ for 19.
No,
For
using
that,
the
we did not.
18
That's
list
what I
is
meant.
fine.
It was this year's engineering you did get.
No.
It's fine, as long as you guys are comfortable with it, I think that's a good
Absolutely.
approach, and I think a round robin approach is excellent. Keeps the, I mean, not to say that these it keeps your quality up higher, and it keeps everybody engaged, those 3 companies engaged.
Right.
Okay.
So with that in mind,
That's
we're
number
gonna try
1.
and,
Yeah.
with trying to design that project this year, we'll want to start looking at what we're wanting to do for next year here in the very near future.
Okay, I think
And-
that's a meeting in itself.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, I truly believe that's a meeting in itself for roadway, and just similar to what we did this year, when we really had one meeting for what roads on the ramp are we gonna try to do, we had alternatives, how you wanted to balance them, best bang for the buck, basically, was our discussion.
God, it feels like we just did that last week, doesn't it?
Seems like it was not very long ago.
So quickly.
Yeah.
We were a little bit late last year with the
Yeah,
RFQ process, getting that out and getting that honed out, I guess.
Obviously, moving this year, if we can move it a little bit sooner, just to get the bids out sooner and get as good a number as we can with that. Okay, so separate meeting.
Can I just say something?
Yep, go right ahead.
With the 2019 roadway construction budget, our plan is to have another $650,000 for that. We've identified a couple roads which we can talk about, and then we were talking about the idea today about potentially every time we do this, you know, there have been times where we go out to bid and we have savings, and we say, oh, what should we do with the savings, and then we're trying to play catch up. But do this in a way where we can have maybe some alternates identified, that if the base does come in lower, we can say, okay, let's do alternate 1 or 2 instead of awarding and then saying, well, we're later in the year now, let's scramble to try to use the savings. So,
I like that idea.
just something we'll be proposing.
I like that idea, cause it keeps things moving, and it's already in the.
That wasn't number
plan.
3, was it? That was number 2 still.
Well, number 2 was
I
kind of
know.
taken care of in all of number 1 was kind of 2 part of it in 1 and 2, so we already took care of that. But one comment on the alternates, this year we did alternates that were kind of large in scale, so my thought would be if we select our alternates that are, you know, more in the $50,000 range that are, you know, would benefit us, so we could actually award them in a scenario where we had some savings.
Yep, I agree with that. Anything else on that one? On that part of budget for streets?
Nope.
No. Suzanne? Okay. Second part of it, and I know this was brought up a couple weeks ago, was the retainer for the 2019 engineering services, which is different. That's Job's, has been Job's. Do you want to give us some thoughts on that?
So my take on that is that the service has been great. They've been meeting our needs, and they understand our goals. They've been great to work with. So I guess if it was up to me, I would continue to use Jobs as our city engineer.
Okay. Are you finding that you're seeing items that are outside of their, so they have a scope, obviously. Are you finding that there are items outside of that scope that we're being asked to pay for in addition to this retainer that are, I guess the best way, and I want to ask this as best I can, that are maybe questionable whether they're outside of the scope or not outside of the scope? Have you found that to be any kind of problems?
Honestly, I haven't had any issues with that. I mean, they've kept us pretty well appraised of where they're at as we go through the year. I know we've done a couple updates. We may have only done 1 this year so far. Maybe it's about time for another one. But they've been tracking pretty well, and there's things that are pretty obvious that are outside the scope, and we run into those, and we've had no problems with that either.
And they've given us a proposal for the 2019, is that correct?
They have not yet.
Not yet.
I wouldn't have this discussion, and I'll echo what Alan said. I've been very satisfied with what Jobs has done. You know, and I don't mean this in the wrong way, but historically we've ended relationships with engineers not on a good foot. We've had and I've been nothing but satisfied with what Jobs has provided. With the question about the scope, I don't know how many times we've said, hey, can we squeeze this into the scope? Let's squeeze it and just try to maximize what we're getting. And they're really good at doing that, working with us. I can also say the turnaround time with them is pretty quick. There's been certain things where like, hey, we need this ASAP, and they've never failed to provide it to us. I don't recall there being any projects or issues where it just, for lack of a better way, blew up on us. It's always been very good. They fit into the team well, and my recommendation is to re-up with them for 2019 for this. Certainly as we're going through the budget stuff, we're having this discussion, I'll be reaching out and asking for a proposal to see, you know, what it would be for 2019.
Right, and I'm not implying that they haven't been in scope. I'm just asking the
No,
question.
it's a good question.
You know, and obviously my concerns would be, are we able to stay relatively close in cost and relatively close in scope? I
Absolutely.
mean, those would be my issues. If that changes, then I think it'd be worth looking outside. But if it doesn't, and you guys are happy with the service,
Very
then it seems to
satisfied.
make a whole lot of sense to stay status quo. Any comments?
I
No?
just say it's
Suzanne?
nice to have some consistency
Yeah.
too, that we've worked with them, and so, you know, they know our projects and things that are going on, and we're not recreating the wheel. As long as everything else is on par, I'd take administration's recommendation on that.
You don't need anything from us on that, do you?
No, it'll be part of the engineering retainer funds will be part of the 2019 budget, And then towards the end of this year, probably first meeting in December, assuming second's canceled, we'll be seeking authorization to sign a contract. That way we're not lagging in 19.
Okay. Anything else on that? Anybody? Okay. Safe travel program, update of the design.
So safe travel plan, the design is in progress. It's for the western intersection of 310 and 16. And we expect 50% plans here towards the end of the first week in September. With that in mind, we've got an aggressive schedule where we're trying to get this out to bid this year and use the funds that we have in the 2018 budget to get that secure a contractor. So to do that, this will be similar to the schedule for Oak Meadow, where we're putting it out for advertisement in October, mid to late October, opening mid-November, and then awarding early December. With that in mind, and to keep us on the same path and make sure that 50% plans, everybody's has the same understanding, I would like to do maybe perhaps another quick committee meeting either the 10th of September or perhaps as late as the 17th to try and keep us on that schedule. I know that's fairly quick, but it could be a short one to look at that and maybe a couple other quick things.
I'm at 5th grade camp the 10th, so you guys can, I mean, you won't offend me if you have a meeting, but I'm out of town the 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Kathy, are there any other meetings on the 17th that you know of by chance?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I'll let PJ speak.
Let's do it on the 17th, and I think a half hour would be plenty, maybe 5:30, because we're working to schedule, I guess, a special council meeting at 6 o'clock to hear from OHM to get an update on the comprehensive plan. And that would run from 6 to 7, then we'd go into regular council meeting at 7. So if we could do 5:30 on the 17th, does that work?
That would work for me, and I would plan to send out the plans to the committee as soon as I receive them, so you could have them ahead of time to look at.
Okay. What, just before we schedule that, the 2019 budget discussion, when do you think you'll be ready for that?
Insofar as
Having, kind of, putting down what roads, having a chart that we can talk through from the ramp. These are the roads for 2019, trying to fit it all together. That's what I'm kind of asking.
Oh, okay.
Do you think that's an October discussion, or do you think that's a September discussion? Or possibly later, I guess.
I guess the reality, I have my top improvements that I have in my mind for the ramp for next year already in mind. I do not have it vetted out much beyond what I have in mind for those top 3 or 4.
But when would you want the committee to have that meeting?
Are you asking if we could do it on the 17th as well?
Nope, I just don't want to, I don't want to do one
That's
the
what I was
17th and one the
I was hoping you were
24th,
asking
and then,
that.
I don't want to stack them up. I'm trying to figure out.
I have a lot going on between now and the 17th, so getting that ready for that meeting would be a challenge for me. So early October.
Which would still allow us to get a contract and get design started plenty of time this year.
For
19 ramp.
For the ramp, yes. So the pedestrian improvements were a little bit tighter of a schedule.
And then one other question, does the street committee need to meet to talk about the street department's budget at all, before the budget discussion at council?
I'm trying to remember.
Should we?
Historically, I don't
We
recall
haven't.
that happening.
We haven't,
And
but
we just cover it all during the special council budget meeting.
and I'm not sure whether that's easier or harder.
There is absolutely no steadfast rule that says you can or you can't. I think it's at the committee prerogative.
Just a matter of fitting it in.
It is certainly a matter of fitting it in. We have bumped the budget meeting back to October 8th. So there's only so many days between now and then to get this squeezed in.
So, if we were to look at, say, the 24th of September to do both the safe travel plan and the budget at the same time, I mean, I could even see us going through kind of the list for the 19 ramp, the budget, the street department budget, and this all in the same meeting, and make those the 3 items in that meeting. Timing wise, is that adequate for you, or is that?
So to put the safe travel plan out to advertise that on October 23rd, that would give less than a month to take that from 50 to 100% plans and get everything ready to go to advertisement, which is, it's not a big project, but I think that'd be putting Jobs in a kind of a tight spot on that one. It concerns me about making sure we get everything right.
What do you think, Mel?
Oh, and it has to go to council to get authorization to bid it out as well.
I'm confused, I thought we were talking about that on September
I
7th.
think Andy's trying to roll all of these into one meeting.
Oh,
I'm
that
not
too.
trying to have a 30-minute meeting, I'm trying to have a meeting where we can talk about 3 things and get them all off the list, rather than having 2 meetings.
Oh,
Because otherwise, what I'm thinking is that, we're gonna see a 17th meeting, which I'm okay with if we wanted to do that, but we probably see a meeting within a week or two, and actually, I'm out the first week in September, so that's gonna make that pretty tough. I'm
First
sorry,
weekend's October?
October, yeah.
If we
October.
moved it from a Monday night to, any other day that works well.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, I just, Suzanne's, that's a tough one, I know you
Yeah, I just got too
keep
many
Mondays, she keeps Mondays
I
available.
keep Monday open,
I
I
am-
got too many
I'm out the
children.
week of the 22nd to the 29th, which is fine. I mean, the discussions can still occur during that time, but as we're talking schedules.
I don't know if, I mean, honestly, not that I love having meetings, but I mean, if we need to get that done on the 17th so Alan can get things moving for the safe travel plan, I think we should just hit that 30-minute meeting for that purpose. And then do the other things. And I don't know how deeply we wanna go in on the budget stuff. I mean, are we just doing an overview or, cause I ain't trying to stay the night here or anything
I
either.
assume it'd be an overview of the large CIP items.
So are you looking for the CIP items or just the entire, like, line item budget? I have a spreadsheet that I built the budget off of, so that's pretty easy.
My recommendation is look at CIP instead of trying to start going through operations and saying, you know, you should have less for gravel in here than this, or whatever.
Well, the only thing I would qualify is on some of these, on large CIP and small in-house, I think those are both 2 that we need to understand from the street committee side of point. Yeah, whether you need a new, you know, I don't know, grade all or whatever you're gonna, you know, whatever on the list this year, which I don't know what's on the list, I'm anxiously awaiting. But those types of things, the small in-house stuff and the outside stuff, that's the stuff that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
Okay, then I think, so we'll go with what was been suggested for the 17th at 5:30, if that's okay with Mel and Suzanne, and we'll do the safe travel plan review, in essence, so we can get out to bid. And then we'll also take that time to figure out when we can maybe meet again. What does since the 24th, BJ, may not be something you need to
I think it
be
can
present for, we could
it can proceed without.
we could do the ramp,
Yes.
so I'm gonna ask this, what do you guys think about a 45-minute meeting on the 24th of September? The 24th, am I right on that?
Yeah.
We can do that in 45 minutes?
Well, I'm trying to not have, like you said, no, I don't think we need, I think this is just more of a, ask the questions on, okay, what about this road, what about that road?
Right.
Type of thing, and then the minor projects that we can do in-house and trying to help fit it together.
That's fine with me, that's fine.
What time on the 24th?
You guys wanna do 4:30 again?
Yeah, sure.
Let's just do that, and if we feel like we're not ready for that, we can cancel that meeting if we have to, but let's just keep it.
When is the budget meeting?
October 8th.
What time
What
is that?
time?
Are we doing regular time or at 7 or?
I'd
we
have to
usually
look.
started them earlier.
I think it's at 6 o'clock.
So for the meeting on the 24th, we're looking at ramp and budget, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Ramp and budget as it pertains to infrastructure work, whether outside or inside.
Not
You don't have
operate.
Columbus Day off, right?
We don't get Columbus Day off now.
On
Me
Monday.
either.
Is that in October?
we don't get it off, so I don't know
Oh, I
either.
don't know.
I know October 8th's my birthday, so I can't think of a better way to spend it than talking
Aw.
about it.
Tim will have
Perfect.
balloons.
I know, I
We
love
might
it.
even get cupcakes.
I love it.
Cupcakes, what?
Yeah, we might even get cupcakes. It's his birthday on the 8th.
All right.
Okay, so we have successfully gotten through this whole entire list in an hour and 10 minutes. That's excellent. I appreciate it. Alan, thank you. This is well organized, and
Nice job.
I only have one small little favor. If there's any chance to get this just a little bit early, then I would just love to look at it. But this is excellent. I appreciate it. I know you're busy, but if there's any chance to get it early, that would be wonderful.
Understood.
Any other comments?
Nope.
Okay, I'll
you,
take a
guys.
motion.
To adjourn.
Second.
Kathy?
Walter?
Yes,
Carter?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
we're adjourned. Thanks to you.
Thank you all.
Put your seats down.
We're just-
We're gonna ask you a question about that restaurant.